Hello, 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 hello. Hi, Scholar here. Today we're going to be talking about motivation in black men. Adding to a prior video, I was told that we need to extend this video, and that's what we're going to do today. Um, as we get into it, I was reflecting on how to really approach this, and this really goes back to some of my dissertation work, and I focus mainly in my graduate work on the theories of human motivation. I was an educational psychologist focused on applied cognition and development, and particularly on the theories of human motivation. So, from this conversation today, I'm really going to give you about a third of what I would give in a theories of human motivation seminar in a college course. And that's really just what we do on this side. Like, we believe in using our information and knowledge base to push forward our Black male studies, Black manosphere ideologies and ideas, because that's really what we're rooted. We're rooted in the empirical, and we're rooted in conversations that have been vetted throughout history and now need to be challenged at this current time. So let's go ahead and start sharing my screen. So this first screen here is really a progression of how the theories of human motivation have changed over time. The theories of human motivation really start very early in what we consider ancient times during Greek and Roman, the height of the Greek Empire and Roman Empire. But Greek philosophers were really fascinated with what makes people go, what pushes people, what drives people. And I didn't use this type of language. I'm using very 20th and 21st century language when I say things like drive and push, because the Greek philosophers believe in hedonism, this kind of seek for desire, for the seek to satisfy these thirst and desires. And as you know, hedonism, especially for the Greeks, was really set around sexual desires. So they believed that with the bacchanalian orgies and that's what they did for their soldiers and warriors as a treat for going out and on this war campaign. So Greek philosophers really believed that hedonism was really what drove and pushed human beings this way or that way. They were then later on followed in the 18th and 19th century by those evolutionary theorists. So people like Charles Darwin are considered a part of theories of human motivation, because what he presents is this idea that intrinsically through our DNA, we are motivated to change. This idea that over time, individuals, species, animals will be driven by their conditions around them, by their environment, to change. So that you now have a different kind of conversation. The Greeks really focused the motivation conversation on individuals and how to move individuals, while evolutionary theorists already start to begin introducing the effect of the environment on the motivation of an individual. Next, you have the behaviorists, and these behaviorists were fascinated with lab-like conditions. So when you think about the Stanford experiment, the Milgram experiment, these were straight up behaviorism, the school of behaviorism, and the behaviorists, as I like to call them, because they wanted to see through these lab experiments what makes human beings tick, despite the damage they did to those human beings. So when you start thinking about behaviorism and its effect on the theories of human motivation and motivation theory, what you start to understand is that they were trying to create closed environments to see what really pushes individuals. So this idea of conditioning as a concept in motivation. So you can actually program individuals to be motivated by certain rewards. That's what goes to the Pavlovian behaviorist experiment. So people start doing these type of Pavlovian experiments on human beings, and that's what Milgram and Stanford were, if you really look at them closely. Setting conditions, operant conditionings, for you to explore whether you can motivate individuals with those rewards, or if you remove those rewards, will those individuals still be motivated? I'm personally glad we moved away from behaviorism and the behaviorist. Keep in mind, this is supposed to be focused on Black men, This was a very white science at this time. As the psychologist wrote, even the lab rats were white during this time. So we're not even thinking about black men or black women and what motivates them. Those are kind of already static and rigid at this time already. By the time the behaviorists, people are doing these behaviorism studies, this is during the Jim Crow era. So while they're trying to explore what makes white American society tick, what pushes them, what drives them, there's this suppression and oppression that they're trying to explain away as well through their experiments. So in the late 20th century, we actually are introduced to these new waves of these learning theorists, cognitive theorists, and social cognitive theorists. And I'll introduce you to some of the social cognitive theorists. And I'm going through this relatively quickly, but once you introduce this idea of not necessarily just closed environmental lab rat behaviorism, you actually start going that the environment is a tool of learning. And through this environment, individuals will learn how to be motivated. So the environment around them, whether it's set or open, when most environments are open, will teach them what they need, what the goals are, how they need to be motivated, and the behaviors they need to display to be motivated. So what they started seeing in school children, for example, is that they are looking at other students, and this idea of modeling, the concept of modeling, is seeing what good behavior is. And from that good behavior, what are the rewards? Are students who exhibit this behavior getting more attention? Are they actually getting some type of physical reward in the form of candy or some type of sweet snack? So learning theorists understood that the environment, we understand what the behaviorists are saying that there's this kind of closed lab rat that you can present rewards and consequences, but there's a wider net for that environment, how that learning takes place. Switching gears, our cognitive theorists actually start to understand that the mind is its own machine. By the time the cognitive theorists of psychology are introduced to the conversation, we have the invention of the computer. And at this time, with the invention of the computer, we now can understand how complex the brain is. So with the invention of the computer, cognitive theorists start understanding how much of the brain we're actually using and different kind of percentages that you've heard before. But they also start to understand that although the learning theorists and all those before them did provide some type of perspective into what motivates people, the brain is so complex that how it understands the environment, how it understands its conditioning, how it understands its sexual desires will really be how it labels those things. The rules it puts in place will really determine whether an individual is motivated or not motivated. So now, instead of approaching children with the, do you want a sucker? Sometimes that sucker is not interpreted by that child as a reward. That sucker may not be interpreted or labeled by that child as something that is desirable, as something that is what we would normally, or what we would perceive as the response from children. Now we know, this is a kind of short example, but that's how the cognitive theorists start to understand. They start understanding that your brain individually will start to label and create rules that will also be important to understand how to motivate you or others. And finally, we arrive at the cognitive theorists and humanists. And that's where I left the last video, which was once cognitive theorists and humanists come into the psychological conversation, particularly in motivation, Black men are left out of the conversation. So cognitive theorists have these kind of beautiful understandings about motivation in human beings psychologically. But as Tommy Curry pointed out in 2018, they're largely left out of these theoretical perspectives. They're largely not a part of the empirical studies that proved and back up some of these theories internationally. So these theories that are social cognitive theories by Bandura, which I'll show you in a few seconds, and humanist theories are empirically backed up through international journals, but have not necessarily been applied to Black American men or Black men internationally at all. And that's really what was surprising in doing this dissertation. So let's jump to another important really kind of focus. So you get an overview of how motivation theory is understood throughout time. We go from Greek philosophers, evolutionary, to the behaviorists, to the learning theorists, to those who've got to get more intricate about the mind and understand cognitive theories. And then people like Bandura, which I'll show you in a few seconds, who understand that while cognition in your individual mind is important, there's this group cultural container that your brain will start to label these things through. And that's where the kid is understanding that sucker through the parenting and family structure, who may see the sucker as a lure. So some families will teach their children, when you see a person, offer you a sucker, this is a dangerous situation. You need to find a safe adult. So right now we're switching gears to share a different presentation. Bear with me as we switch gears. Because right now we're going to delve into more of our, what influences our kind of modern conceptions of motivation. All right. So most of our current understandings of motivation that we espouse to people in our everyday lives first starts with hedonism. So we believe that there's this kind of licentious desire that we all have, that we all trying to respond to, but that doesn't necessarily explain those who are children and small and babies. They have motivation that is able to be seen and recognized and observed. So most of what people are describing in today, they understand through achievement motivation theory, one of the major theories in motivation study. And it was initially introduced by this guy by the name of Henry Murray in the 1930s. And what he understood was, what you're really trying to do is try to find a path of least resistance. You're trying to overcome obstacles, exercise power, and do all of this without resistance, with the least resistance as possible. And he actually created a test in the 1940s that used what you understood, kind of this psychology experiment, what you saw in the pictures, to understand what really is motivating you, what is really the things that drive you. Are you approach or avoidant? And he wasn't using this type of language, but this was the type of study that he was really trying to focus in on. Keep in mind that I'm already trying to show you that the theories of human motivation will shift over time with what's happening during the time period. That's one of the things that psychology in the Western civilizations and Western world really falls victim to. This idea of in 1938, post-World War I, during World War II, you have this guy who's trying to understand what's really making people tick, what's really pushing or driving individuals, what are their desires or tendencies, as you see here. And it's all around this idea of achieving. I'll be remiss not to say that achievement motivation was really fascinated with high achievement, like those individuals who are the best at their craft, those who are experts. So they wanted to understand through the highest achievers, what is the magical stuff that they have that makes them better than all the rest. All right, fast forward to his student, John Atkinson. John Atkinson is going to contribute to this theory of achievement motivation by believing that individuals have this intrinsic desire or need to achieve that is only staved off or tempered, as it says here, by this idea that you need to avoid failure. So that's a very modern conception of what we're trying to do when it comes to school achievement, achievement in the broader sense of life and career, that you want to go as high as you can go without this idea that you will fall out of the sky. And John Atkinson is the individual who introduces that to motivation. Now, it is important to point out that John Atkinson, as much as McClellan, will write explicitly that these concepts do not apply to African Americans in the same sense, because African Americans to them lacked certain qualities that were important in these type of theories. So John Atkinson particularly argued that the need to achieve was not necessarily as high in African American men and women as it was in other groups. So Atkinson, student of McClellan. McClellan introduces some of the major concepts in motivation theory that are still useful today. Again, achieve motivation theory, just like the rest of them, hedonism, the behaviorist, all of them are useful. However, they're limited. All of these theories are limited. So what McClellan introduces is this idea of delayed gratification, this concept of motivation training via affiliation. So we've all heard about delayed gratification, that one of the keys to achieving, especially over the high achievements over longer periods of time, like getting a college degree, earning a high school diploma, finishing trade school, you need to forego those immediate rewards. So there's no, you need to forego the A. The A was good enough for you to go to the next course. If you take that A and say, now I'm a professional, and walk out of school and drop out of school, you were not able to complete this kind of long-term goal. So he understood, to complete long-term goals, you need to delay gratification, delay rewards, delay satisfaction in order to achieve great things, according to his theory and his perspectives of achieving motivation. He also believed that, not necessarily in the social cognitive sense, but your parents and the people around you, your affiliations, are actually teaching you how to achieve. This is how he explained why the rich kids keep getting into the executive positions. They are around other rich kids and they have executive parents. So McClellan, in many ways, uses motivation theory to explain society. And as I said before, there's some useful parts to this explanation, but there's also some racist tropes that are going to be explained away through this, because this is still, like you said, Atkinson is his teacher. He still believes this idea that there's this need to achieve that is actually more endemic to white men than white women, than anybody else in the world. He's trying to explain why white men and women have been able to dominate the world, because they have this natural need to achieve. They're willing to delay gratification to the very end, and they have the network in order to do so. You guys got to pardon me. I have a dinosaur I'm trying to work with to share my screen here. We're at about 20 minutes. I think we got about 10 more minutes, maybe here, before we wrap it up. Didn't want to be too long-winded, because this stuff is kind of, again, this is like a third of a college course, so this would kind of be dense for some people. However, I wanted to make sure I provided really a part of my expertise in order to stimulate the conversation a bit more. We're going to move forward to a social cognitive theory of motivation, or how the social cognitive theories have been introduced into motivation. If you were in my course, I would definitely have you read more deeply into these topics. Okay, next face you see here is Albert Bandura, professor out of Stanford University, I believe. Last time I heard, or was, this is where he wrote the theories of the social cognitive theory, also began and stemmed from social learning theory. But Albert Bandura introduces social cognitive theory. And as I said before, this is when we start understanding that a group and how the group sets our understanding of goals and motivation is integral. So social cognitive theory introduces not only is your brain this dynamic machine that is labeling and understanding the world, but this brain is adapting and learning and being motivated through the people around you. See if there's anything else I want to share here, because where I wanted to wrap up is with a more humanistic conversation of motivation. All right, so as you see here, social cognitive theory expands social learning theory. So what they wanted to explain was it's not just your brain labeling schema. It's not just a neurological process, but there's also this process of introducing belief, expectations, perceptions of self that will also be integral in whether individuals motivated to learn, or whether individuals motivated to complete a task or achieve a goal. Social cognitive theory allowed for more explanation and perspectives to be introduced into motivation theory, one of them being self-regulation. Attribution is the conversation we have in our class, as well as more dynamic theories, dynamic social network theory. They all come out of this idea that beliefs and expectations and perception of self will and can override any conditioning, any learned behavior. You come from a container or a social group that's going to help you learn who you are, learn the environment around you, wire your brain into certain behaviors associated with your more biological and programmed, conditioned behavior as well, from a broader sense. And again, I'm trying to kind of gloss over some of these things because this would be, if you were getting a degree in educational psychology, we go into more deeper concepts, but some of these concepts you've heard about, like achievement motivation, like attribution, these are things that people throw around because motivation conversations, everybody wants to be a motivational theorist or at least a motivational speaker. But they may not know where these conversations come from, where they're rooted. All right, we're going to finally finish up with one of the humanistic theories of motivation, which I've discussed before on this channel, but hopefully this packaging of it will be better received, which is the idea of self-determination. This was introduced by Deci and Ryan in 1985, and it's one of the first macro theories of human motivation. And this macro theory, what all that means is a theory that really incorporates or includes many other theories, like achievement motivation, like attribution, in order to really understand human beings more broadly. So this is an international theory that has been tested empirically. And basically what this theory says is that all human beings are motivated. All human beings have the will or volition to want to feel like they can achieve their own goals, want to feel like they're related to other individuals. All human beings have this kind of fundamental feeling within themselves that they want to be capable and competent. They want to feel like they have choices and control, and they want to feel connected to one another. Once this statement of all human beings are motivated is introduced to the psychological conversation, this was not tested or has been challenged in the classrooms where Black boys have been seen as being lacking motivation. This has not been extended to Black American society, where tropes about Black men as being lazy and docile were widely spread. And when I was in graduate school back in 2016, 17, and reading through motivation literature and seeing some of the international studies that they were doing in places like Brazil, comparing it to China, comparing it to Canada, particularly with using SDT, self-determination theory, I was asking myself, like, okay, this is great that we have these broad, sweeping understandings that all human beings want to be motivated. I think that is a noble way of understanding human beings. That's something that psychology should be doing. But then I called BS, because what I understood was that right whenever we start saying all human beings, there was still no paper to challenge the tropes that have been introduced in the 19th and 20th century about Black men. There were no papers to challenge that, especially in the Black America, that if you make sure that in the classroom Black boys feel competent and capable, you wouldn't have that third grade slump where you're building prisons to limit their choices and control of their lives. The explanation for the rise of the gang culture in the late 80s and 90s could be related to this idea of relatedness and connectedness amongst those in their social group. And we know some of this, but some of this is also glossed over, is my point in what I'm saying. In 2018, in a paper in 2018, Tommy Curry talks about part of the issue that we have in the academy is Black men are largely left out of theories. So these theories that are like this one that could propel the conversation forward, could really move policies that say, no, given the same resources, given the same conditions, they will show themselves to be human like other people. That hasn't been done. And I think that is a shame. I think that is the issue that we currently have in the academy, and psychology has been no different. And part of the conversation I'm having here is really walking us back all the way to Greek philosophy and understanding that, hedonism was used to explain as a trope this kind of Black brute, that he is only driven by his sexual desires, particularly for white women. But when we start getting into the more modern learning, cognitive, social cognitive, and humanistic theories of motivation, those that really personify and humanize what it means to have goals or be driven or have push or drive, Black men are vacant. Black men are overlooked because we already understand Black men's motivation through these tropes, through these stereotypes, and in more modern terms, they put with these kind of particular archetypes to explain Black men and how we are move forward, are driven forward, and they've always tried to limit that conversation. I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing my screen because I really want to just give us a gloss over. Hopefully this was beneficial to you. We're right here at the 30-minute mark, and I think that's a good course. This was a very dense conversation. I look forward to your comments, to have more conversations and really give me more ideas of things you guys want to hear, not just limited to psychology and motivation theory, but I talk about education and some other topics as well that I'll be posting in the future. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your support. Hopefully you guys found this conversation about really the time and generations of motivation theory and how Black men have really been absent from it to be beneficial. You guys take it easy. Peace.